we can handle more than we think we can handle. The mind gives up before the body ever even considers. The mind is our willingness to meet our feelings.
There's only so much time, whether it's sooner than later. It's clear. I'm getting to that age where I'm acknowledging that our parents are getting older, and maybe the only thing that's keeping them going is this thread of resilience. If we're able to acknowledge what we see in that, will benefit them and their healing.
So many people have stories about men included, that we don't have emotions. And it's so far from the truth, and it's in fact the opposite. Is when we feel them, we're actually more masculine, of like, oh wow, I am so powerful.
The difficulties of celebrating my sister's birthday, my birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Mother's Day, like all of these things without my mom, I found creative ways to create new traditions as a family unit and Zen of what it means to celebrate these holidays now. Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast.
Before we begin the next episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to ask for your support in helping us grow our podcast.
Take a moment to like, subscribe, or follow on whatever platform you're watching this on.
Your engagement helps us to grow our platform, as well as allows us to invite even more interesting interviews in the future. I hope you enjoy the following episode and wish that you gain insight, clarity, or knowledge about what it means for you to embrace being human.
Welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast. We have a very unique and I'll call special episode. We're going to do a little reflection and share of what 2024 has been like for us, because it definitely was a fruitful year of lessons and growth, and definitely healing and reality checks in many ways too. And I think it would be a really powerful conversation to share with each other, considering we shared the year together, and at the same time we walk our own paths. And within that, I'm sure there's uniqueness to what you have to share in your year and our year. Also leading into with what we learned, what are we calling in, and what are we desiring the new year with everything that happened this year. You as a listener will have an opportunity to also resonate and take all these lessons and really find ways to integrate it into the new year. And another year full of magic and beauty, and with a little bit more grounding and clarity and understanding of how to be human. I'll start by asking you, Sir Scott, what lessons did you experience yourself in 2024 that was really profound for your experience? And I know that not everyone knows that our year was really focused on grief and self-reflection and a refreshing restart to our lives. What would you like to share with the audience regarding your whole experience and process? Would love to hear.
The first thing that really comes up, like very poignantly, I just went like January 5th, I flew back to the island as a resident of Hawaii. I sold my house on December 28th, I think it was. And I flew to Maui with all of my stuff in tow. Just so happened today we were in that U-Haul, and a little bit of reminiscing of that whole journey, and that was rough. I mean, flying back to Ohio to pack up my entire house by myself pretty much, and giving away most of my things so that I could just transition in a good way. And I let a lot out in that house before I left. And so the year started very somberly. It wasn't like, yeah, here we go, I'm a Hawaii resident. Da, da, da. It was just like, man, what did I just do? Because the week I got back, I told my therapist, I was like, hey, just so you know, I sold my house and I moved to Hawaii. She said, this will be our last session. Like, just so flat out. It was just like, I shouldn't even have this session, but I feel like it would be wrong to just cut you off.
Wow.
And I was like, damn, like, just like that, huh? And I mean, you know, she was your typical black and white therapist, you know, like, which nothing wrong with her. She was great. She was super helpful. End scene, new scene begin, next act, you know? It was just like very stark. And so, you know, we talked many a time about how the word of the year was gentle, you know, or compassion, or ease, like not even ease, gentle. Because it was rough for both of us. I mean, we were deep in our grief process. And so the first couple of months of the year were very confusing for me. It was a lot of like, I don't have grounding. I don't have my footing in life. I don't know what's going on. I didn't have my things yet. They didn't arrive till March. And so those first couple of months were very confusing. I felt very ungrounded and just like unsure of myself, unsure of what to do, unsure of what I was going to be doing. In a way, like it gave me a lot of opportunity to really find a new level of like softness in the way I spoke to myself. Like I see all these Instagram posts or like, they used to be like David Goggins. I'm like, go hard, bitch, like all that type of stuff. And it was like, no, like that doesn't resonate at all anymore. And then it was like, it's okay if you're not okay. And like, you're allowed to take the day off. And there was a lot of guilt in that. There was a lot of like, what are you doing, bro? Like, this is pathetic. And it was like, oh, wow. Like, I don't give myself any credit for how hard this is. And so the first half of the year was very much like just catching my breath, I feel like. And it was in maybe April that my partner and I like really had some like coming to Jesus, get off the pot or shit or get off the pot type moments of like, what are we doing here? We were in a full-on situationship, I didn't want to commit. I wanted to be the little boy and kick and scream and eat my cake and blah, blah, blah and all the things. And then it became really clear of like, hey, if you're not going to commit to me, I'm going to commit to someone else. And it was just like, wait a second, that's not how this works. And she's like, how do you think it works? And I got a really good lesson in like integrity and communication and all that stuff. And so, yeah, the first half of the year was very like, are we going to live the old life or the new life? The first half of the year was very clearly like, we're going to live the new life. So grieve the old life. In the second half of the year, punctuate July is when I went to Colombia and led that retreat and sat with Yahé again. And the second half of the year was get ready for the new life then. And it wasn't like live the new life now. Like there was still some shoring up and, to quit using cannabis and some of those like not harder things, but just like more disciplined, more challenging, like commit type things. So the second half of the year was very like get things in order and continue the gentleness, right? It wasn't like get things in order and like we're doing 75 hard. It was like get things in order, and if you need to take a nap because all I've been doing is grieving or purging or like preparing, all that type of stuff, like that's okay. I took an hour and a half nap today. It felt incredible. And old me would be like, that's not allowed, and new me is like, that's incredible. Like, you're willing to give yourself that space. I'm so tired. Like, and to just, boom, gone. And then wake up like, I'm still tired. Like, boom, gone. Okay, here we go. Now I'm ready, And like, so this new level of excitement that's been festering and fostering. And I feel like, and we'll dive into this more of just, I feel like the word for 2025 for me is power. Is reclaiming my power, standing in my power, exercising my power, sharing my power, teaching power. Like that word feels very resonant. And so at the end of the year where we stand, I feel ready to go. That was a big thing. I wasn't ready. And that's something that came through in my therapy yesterday was like, I've been beating myself up like I should be there, but I was never ready. I wasn't ready to do these things. I wasn't ready to be responsible with tens of thousands of dollars a month in income. I wasn't responsible and ready to like act in accordance with the life I was calling in. And Amber even asked me one day, she's like, what would you even need $20,000 a month for? I was, well, I buy some new shoes and we travel some more. We go out to eat more often. She's like, that's not $20,000 a month consistently. What do you need $20,000 a month for? And I was like, oh, I want to be able to lay on my bed and contemplate life without the fear or guilt that it's going to run out. And she's like, that's why you need that money. And you don't need $20,000 to do that. You need permission. And I was like, ooh, that, like, because that's what I want to do. And until I create a life vision that calls and beckons for $20,000 a month in income, life doesn't actually think I need it. I don't think I need it, therefore life will not give it to me.
Yeah.
And so to start dreaming with you and with Amber in our community on a level where it's like, what could we do with that type of money? What kind of impact could we have? Because the answer's not a Lamborghini anymore. It used to be. Totally used to be like, I want a G-Wagon. Now it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe like a Ford Bronco or like a Toyota Highlander, like something reasonable. But then what? That's like maybe $800 a month, Yeah. Okay, that's $19,000 left. Then what? It's just like, man, we could be offering workshops and giving back and housing people, like all sorts of crazy things. And it's like, that's why I need $20,000 a month, And so This year was very challenging. I felt multiple times like I was floating through a meat grinder, like a blender. And, it gave us an opportunity to get a lot more clear with ourselves and with each other in our communication, with this housing situation with Danielle, with our partnerships. And I don't like using the word proud because it's got such a negative connotation, but I'm proud of the work that we've done and the time that we've taken to do something sustainable and to not force things, because I know force well. I'm pretty good at it. And it's not sustainable. It's not enjoyable. And I think what we're calling in now is excitement, is enjoyment, is deep belly laughter, is the opportunity to go play in the dirt and get dirty and be like, yeah, let's go jump in the cold plunge. And, it's a lot of what we've been doing, but it's in a different vibrational energy and come from. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on that, and then maybe go into some of the standout moments of the year that really wayfindered us to this point. But yeah, how was the year for you?
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, listening to you share definitely teleported me back in time a little bit. Yeah, 2024. I'm going to follow and piggyback off of you, kind of breaking up the year in half, because I do feel that there was a threshold that was crossed mid-year. Comparing both halves of the year were definitely completely different, with still common themes of grief and pause and gentleness, and a lot of similarities in the sense the first 6 months of the year were probably the hardest in the span of since my mom passed in August, which was, pretty much 6 months before that. The first 6 months, what I'll call the muck time for both of us, and even for my sister. I think there was a lot of purging of emotions happening, and we were still learning how to support each other in that. We were still learning how to show up for my sister and for ourselves. And that theme of the first 6 months and going into 2024 was the gentleness and the non-force, because it was almost like, how much can you surrender to being torn apart, and to the crumbling, because we clearly had to crumble what felt like every aspect of the way I viewed life, the way I expected life to be, how I expected the year to unfold, and learning that a lot of that was out of our control. And what was in our control was what we chose to do with it. And it was very clear that these experiences of grief and sadness and anger and frustration and all the emotions essentially weren't going to just disappear, or be able to be controlled, for that matter. And it was just the ask of leaning in completely, or can you lean in completely as everything around you falls apart, all while things are being put together at the same time, but a lot slower than anticipated. And so it was a test of patience, the test of faith, the test of surrender, culminating into that 6 month mark. It was, now that you've surrendered and paused, there are still aspects that were still floating around, and came down to, now can you ask for help? Can you ask for support? Can you ask for what you need? I think there was a very potent part of that process where, for myself, I had to dive in alone, and just your presence in that dynamic of knowing that I could fall apart, and if I spiraled, you were able to grab me for that moment and pause me from the spiral and kind of process through it, so that way I didn't completely hit and fall into the black hole, which there were times where I completely did. And the lesson of even if you fall into the black hole of the abyss, and you still have the ability to get yourself out of it. And that only came with the surrender of falling into the black hole. And to get completely out of it, it came to asking for the help and asking for the support to kind of put those last pieces in place to really stand up tall. That's really what the 6 months felt like, and Zen was here for part of that. And I was learning how to kind of balance and juggle my needs, his needs, Danielle's needs, the house needs, and And that was really hard, but also really beautiful to be able to just be fully present with Zen, which is really healing for both of us. And then leading into the latter half of the year, Zen was probably gone for like 3.5 months of it. Around there, he got back end of October. So there's that aspect of the transition where with him leaving after building a routine and being fully present with him, of now I'm back to feeling alone again. A lot of my energy and capacity was focused on Zen, and it was enjoyable. Got to do sports and do all kinds of stuff. I coached. And once I removed that, it was like, oh, I'm not necessarily back at square one, but all the stuff that was put to the side is like, whoa, what's up, bro? Don't forget about me. And then came the next layer of surrendering and acknowledging, like, okay, I do have a lot on my plate, and how do I want to navigate the rest of the year? And what do I really want to be doing as I'm leaning into the reset of my life? Like, I'm starting from scratch. And the first 6 months was really purging all of what I thought it was going to be. And also following with, well, then if it's not that, then what is it? With the beautiful line of, Gregory's purpose spark, if not this, then better. And really leaning into that and believing in it. And, using my faith in the work we're doing, and it just felt so real that there has to be something, there has to be the golden pot at the end of the rainbow, essentially, like with all that we've been doing. It just didn't make sense for it to just continue spiraling, because even though we leaned into the spiral, we were getting lifted up in different parts of our life. And it was like, okay, so this is working. It's just we don't see or understand what the end product is. But I think we're starting to know what it feels like. And that's a sense of peace, and joy, and like you said, a lot of laughter, deep connections with ourself, deep connections with each other, deeper connections with my sister, and then just rippling out, to our relationships, to our community. So the latter 6 months has been the complete opposite, and I've actually been really enjoying the last 6 months. What I said in many of our groups that we have, whether it's the men's group or even the fathers group that I facilitate, is for a good while it's just seeing black and white. Like there was no excitement, there was no sense of purpose. It just seemed very bland and dark and heavy, and slow. And around that 6 month mark, there was a glimmer of color, and more and more color leading up to my trip in Oahu, where I was driving around Skyla to show her different parts of the island that she didn't get to see. As I was like observing and taking in all the magic as she was, I was looking up at the mountains and being like, wow, it's not only colorful now it's vibrant. Like there's vibrancy in the color, almost like everything I'm looking at is alive. It was that moment of like, wow, I've come full circle. The last 6 months, as we get to the tail end of December, went by really fast, as opposed to the first 6 months going really fucking slow. And I think that's because of our intention of being really present with ourselves, being really present with what's happening to us internally and externally, and that really caused the time to slow down. And then things started to pick up. Excitement got introduced back into my life. Started dating, and met someone really special. Gave me the ability to really be seen and witnessed in the process, as well as like celebrate and support all that's unfolding for me, which has been just really beautiful. And now it's coming to a place of like, after coming back from Oahu, it's like now I'm full of energy, as opposed to like running on E and just trying to survive. Now I'm just feel like I'm abundantly flowing, and I'm not necessarily forcing myself to do things. Like my life is presenting things for me to do that feel really good, like jumping in a garden, digging a shit ton of holes and mowing grass, which brought me back to my childhood, and remembering like those special moments of being alone and almost being in a meditative state, and being connected to the land again, especially being here in Maui, where the land is so potent and offers so much, and to have these things. And what I'll say, like the last 6 months for me has been a full circle dynamic, like and not necessarily completion. I don't think I believe in completions. I think it's all evolving and interconnected. And what I'm feeling in this spiral is a lot of momentum building. And it seems like, the spiral is picking up speed in a really beautiful and exciting way. I don't have to try, which is really great. I didn't have to try to find a relationship. I didn't have to try to figure things out. And I think the 6 months is what really taught us that energy of surrendering and pausing and being really gentle and compassionate with ourselves and each other's process allowed us to really create infinite amount of space for all that we desire to come in. And it's been a really exciting process as you share things that are popping up for you with opportunities. And now for me, like there's just a lot happening. And it feels like the culmination of all the things we've navigated over the last year coming into fruition. And I'm actually feeling this like excitement to celebrate, which is kind of what the theme of this podcast is, to acknowledge, everything from the last year that has got us to this point, because it was not easy. It was so fucking difficult. It was scary. It was depressing. A lot of unexpected things, and just, taking it moment to moment, as Skylar would say. And I'm just also really proud of all the work we've done for each other, for ourselves, and the life you've helped me create for my sister, and the partnerships that we have is just evidence to me of like, we're not far off from the golden pot. And it's almost like we're sliding down the rainbow on a slide, being like, let's fucking go, hands up in the air, and let's just see where we land, because wherever we land, it's going to be fucking amazing. And that's what I feel, reflecting back over the last year is these polarities, and remembering that life is about polarities, and everything is temporary. I think that's a big one too, is when you're in the thick of the grief, the anger, it feels so overwhelming that it seems like it's never going to end. Especially, there's a few weeks where both of us were just really in it. And it was just like, fuck, how much more can we handle? How many more pauses and counseling can we do before this shit passes? And there's no number on it. And that's what I acknowledge is the lessons I've learned is the way to cultivate my power is to ask for help. And the way to bring in the life I desire is to create space for it. And here we are, end of the year, where things seem to be going really fucking fast. And I'm even still a little bit anxious about the speed that it's going. And New Year's is literally around the corner. Like Christmas is next week. Like that's insane. I'm just flashing back to being back in April, May, June, of just being in it, and all of a sudden we're in a completely different headspace, a different heart space, and even our bodies are feeling completely different, and it's really exciting. And I'm like inspired by our own experience to continue. And I think it's really powerful to kind of tap into what you're calling in the theme of 2025 is the power. I'm feeling that too. Like I feel it brewing. And I'm surrendering to it as well, and creating more space for that power to manifest into whatever it is for myself and for you and for us and this house and everything. Like it's been a really beautiful, difficult, and humbling year in all. So yeah, with that, I'm in.
Yeah, it's... you said a couple things, and I think they're really good takeaways, both for ourselves, but also the people tuning in. I have a feeling they're going to resonate with. And one of those things was we can handle more than we think we can handle. Mm-hmm. The mind gives up before the body ever even considers. And I don't say that like everything is in the body, but like the mind is oftentimes being like, how is this possible? And the ego's like, I can't handle it. And sometimes the goal is not to be like, yeah, you can. What I have realized, and I'm guessing that you can resonate with, is that sometimes the opportunity is to say, brother, I can't handle this. Like the amount of times I've cried with you in that sauna, or you've cried with me in these chairs, like to just let it go, to just let the body set it down and just express how hard it really can be. And I'm just so, again, I use the word proud of like our willingness to meet our feelings. You know, so many people, especially so many people have stories about men included, that we don't have emotions. And it's so far from the truth. What we've done is we've ingrained in us a program that says you're not a man if you feel them. And it's in fact the opposite, is when we feel them, we're actually more masculine, of like, oh wow, I am so powerful, and I've been doing this all by myself, and I've not had support, and oh wow, this is actually really beautiful. And so I say all that because I think one of the things that we're creating here with this podcast and this community of listeners and audienceship is the opportunity to be supported together. And so, again, as a reminder, as you're listening to this, to whether it's reach out to us, to the community that we're creating through our social media streams, to your friends, to be like, hey, you know, I never acknowledged you for being there for me this last year. Like, I really appreciate that. Or I never admitted that I needed your support, and for that I started resenting you. You know, like, to have these powerful conversations and just own our authentic experience, I think is going to be something so critical in 2025. And the second one is an exercise that I introduced you to as a picture from the airport in Oahu, or from Oahu, and I just want to give this to our audienceship as well. It's I actually received it from one of my friends named Sway, and he does it with his wife. I now do it with my partner, and it's called Peak and Pit. What is the high and the low, right? And so you mentioned this like roller coaster ride where we're throwing our hands up. That's the peak, you know? But then the pit is when we fall and we feel like we're going to throw up, you know? It's just like this, like, ugh. And so I'd love to hear a couple of your peaks and your pits. Maybe we go back and forth, one for one, peaks and then pits, and peaks and then pits, just to see for ourselves and those tuning in that there are some really high highs, and they're sometimes often coupled with some of the lowest lows. Yeah. And I'd love to hear whether you want to start with a peak or a pit, something that really stands out in 2025 or 2024.
Yeah. Peaks and pits. I think that's the name of this episode. Yeah, thank you for bringing that into my life, especially coming back from Oahu. It was the perfect way to kind of wrap up the experience and honor it, essentially, because it was just like life is on a daily basis, peaks and pits. And I guess this ties into something that came up for me as you were talking and sharing in this next round. I think a peak for me is, I know a peak of what I gained from this year is the power of being witnessed. It's shown me so much, not just in my own experience, but in other men and relationships, and acknowledging, like, when I'm just observing or listening to someone or a group, we're so hungry to be seen, so hungry that we're desperate. There's also a fear of leaning into being seen fully, authentically. And a peak for me is my own experience of allowing myself to be witnessed, allowing myself to ask to be witnessed, knowing that a lot of what comes out of my mouth isn't necessarily a deep truth. It may be true to some degree, but it's not like ingrained. It just needed to be witnessed in order to, like, be released. And I see that as like a really powerful peak that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. And being who I am, going to offer myself in ways to witness others so that they can feel that relief. So much weight, especially with men, is carried, and we're so scared to talk about it, the vulnerability of it. And I saw some, Filipino Instagram post about the Asian shame and how we're taught to not speak up because we'll get in trouble, or it'll show us as weak. So therefore, that will translate to many things. If you're at work, then therefore you won't get the promotion, or you complain on a team, then you're a problem, and you're not going to be in the starting lineup. Like all kinds of stuff. Like, and I understand that at certain times that made sense. Mostly for like my dad's generation, I totally get it, and I don't necessarily think that's very relevant nowadays. And so to be witnessed in your shame and your guilt and your anger and your frustration and your fear as a man or even as a woman, like to be witnessed is probably one of the peakest of the peaks of 2024 for me, without a doubt. And I think there's a lot of medicine there for people to experience. And we brought this up in another episode about like finding circles or community where you can fully be authentic to be witnessed. I encourage everyone to kind of explore and experiment with what it means to be fully witnessed as your human self, authentically. And it might be ugly to start off. Like it probably will be, because there's a lot of shit to purge. There's a lot of shit to witness. And at the layers below that is a lot of fucking magic, a lot of beauty, and most times a lot of laughter too, because now you can look back on that and really acknowledge what it was, which is a deep lesson, and how we were programmed to navigate that lesson at the time. And in hindsight, you could be like, well, now I know. And so I think witnessing for me is the first peak I'll share, and I'll pass the ball to you to jump in and share something of yours.
Yeah, the first one that stands out is it's in the realm of witnessing, but the word that came up for me was commitment. In April into May, I set myself up for a 6-week deep dive into my commitment. And the first of that was the Mankind Project weekend. And in that was the witnessing of me feeling like I was out of place. And actually, oddly enough, it was that I felt like I was better than the men in the group. I've been doing this for 4 years. I've been in men's group. I've done retreats. I've led the fucking retreats. I feel like I'm better than you. And to your point that it's not a truth, it's just my reality that needs to be shared and witnessed so that I can shed it. I stood in front of 60 men and been like, I think I'm better than you. You know, and some of those guys are like, you're a fucking douche. And as soon as I owned it, I was like, this is exactly where I need to be. Is in this group of men. Owning that I'm, because here's the thing, for years I was less than, not good enough, wasn't worth it, wasn't valued, wasn't important, didn't matter. And for the first time in front of a bunch of powerful ass brothers was like, I'm fucking better than you, was really just me catching up to being good enough. You know, that was deep, deep medicine for me to sit there and own that, as uncomfortable as it was and how much I thought these men might like me. I was like, I don't care. And this isn't even the truth of the matter, but I need to own my power and know that I'm worth something. I got home from that weekend, and the next weekend was the landmark advanced communications course, which I knew was going to be super challenging because it was going to cause me to be the cause in transformation in my relationship with my parents, with my partner, with you, with my brother. And all of those were super powerful to have some really profound conversations. I remember very plain as day the ones with my parents and my brother. Called my brother and I was like, you know, I really have it that you don't care about me, that you don't love me. And he's like, oh man, that sucks. He's like, I'm so sorry. Like, yeah, there's been some stuff there, but of course I love you, Scott. And I was just crying. And to put myself vulnerably in the space of like, this is how I feel. This isn't the truth of the matter, but I need to be witnessed in my inadequacy in our relationship so that it can be repaired. It was so profound. And I showed up. I woke up at 3:45 in the morning for a 12-hour phone call 3 days in a row. That's some badass commitment. Like, I was not fucking around. And then I went into it was like 40-day breathwork program with Free Spira to recode my amygdala to increase the CO2 tolerance so that I could fall into rest and repair amidst while being in therapy. And I knew, I did it back in 2020 and I spiraled because of all the trauma that came from re-oxygenating my brain through this breath work. I spiraled. And I knew I had the support now. I had 3 therapists in May at the time. And I was like, I'm going to go in. And in the middle of that, I remember stopped smoking. Like on day 21 or something, I just quit smoking weed. I just put it down completely. And I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of this trauma came up of like deep, deep emotional releases and EMDR and all that stuff. But I kept going through it every day, 2 18-minute breathwork practices, sitting still, feeling. And it was so profound. Like, and for me to witness myself in my commitment that I made to myself and that I kept was like, bro, this is incredible, and to see the power of discipline, because it's coming back full force now of like, okay, podcast is launching, working out and training others, social media content, coaching, growing stuff. Like, it's game time.
Mm-hmm.
And that lives inside of my commitment and my discipline. And this quote I heard recently that was so profound, like most people think of discipline as a masculine thing. Like, I'm disciplined. But the way it was distinguished in this talk was that discipline comes from the word disciple. And what it really signifies is this commitment to loving something, which is a feminine quality of like, we have discipline because we have love for ourselves, which is very soft when you think about it, but it's the rigor of the consistency that's the masculine. So it's a beautiful blending of it. And to have this like vision that is calling forth the opportunity to commit to something is like really exciting. Mm-hmm. And I really agree with you on this witnessing aspect, the opportunity to be seen, like for me, this podcast is not about like, oh, look at me. It's about see me loving myself as who I am in the world. Mm-hmm. Not look at all the cool shit I'm doing, all the people I get to talk to. Like, I'm more interested in talking to these people for the listeners than I am for myself. And so, yeah, it feels like servitude, like service, this opportunity to serve something greater. And so that's what stuck out is really the end of April and the month of May was a big, big time for growth, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I'll definitely share that one of the pits were a couple scary moments with my dad's cancer scares. Mm. It was one of those like, oh no, here we go again. But with the difference that, like, this time in comparison to my mom, I have an opportunity to spend time with him. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I guess the first scare turned out to be doctor error, I guess, just to call it out. And then, more recently, while I was in Oahu was, another one. And we're still waiting to get the feedback on that or the results. But those, two moments that, there's a lot of build up to it and a lot of sitting with it for me of, well, what does that mean for me and how I want to show up? What does that mean in preparation for what could be? And it was really scary. It was a difficult thing to face, that I may have to deal with grief all over again in a whole nother realm with my father. Mm. He is getting older, and I'm very well aware that, there's only so much time, whether it's sooner than later. It's clear, I'm getting to that age where I'm acknowledging that that's the chapter myself and a lot of my friends are in, where our parents are getting older, and I'm not the only one who, lost a parent this year or recently, and acknowledging the temporariness, that's a word, of life, and how short life really is, and which is just leading to, the opportunity to restart and reset. Death has a very powerful way of doing that if we choose to face it in that way. And for me, I wasn't enjoying my life and what I was doing, so therefore let's change it, because I feel that was the gift that my mom gave me. And then with the dad having some cancer scares, it brought that right to the forefront of my face, and saw an opportunity, even though it was a pit, I had an opportunity to show up for my dad. which was very healing for just my experience to be able to do that for him, take him to his appointments and talk to him, and to be the one to talk to the doctor, to get the information, to relay the message to him, like stuff like that, where the roles have kind of flipped, was really humbling. And when my mom passed, it was what we called the initiation. And I'm starting with the initiation. The torch wasn't quite passed. It was the preparation of it. And I'm seeing now the preparation is getting closer, whether it's, while he's alive or not, like the energy of my family's torch being passed to me. And it feels like a big honor to do that. And a lot of responsibility, I acknowledge that. But a responsibility that, I get to witness my sister as the results of me taking that torch. And it with the peaks, it's directly connected to the pits and vice versa. So with that pit, as difficult and scary as it was throughout the year, it was also very honoring and humbling to experience it. And part of me feels grateful that this was the way it unfolded, as opposed to the way it unfolded for my mom, where I didn't even get to say goodbye. And the last time I physically got to see her alive was in the ICU. And I get to kind of change that script with my dad, however long I have with him. And yeah, that was definitely a pit that I know is going to be ongoing, and come up as a pit again. I'm not scared to admit that, because I understand now, like, this is life and the temporariness of it. And again, it comes down to how I choose to show up and navigate it and respond to it, as opposed to running away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my pit.
Yeah. The word that really stuck out there was initiation.
Mm-hmm.
And one place that sticks out as a pit was an initiation that I went through with Amber back in April, end of March, where it was very clear that we were situation shipping. She was ready. I was not. I was deep in my grief with Chester. I was still like playing this game of like, well, I just moved to the Hawaiian Islands and I want to be fucking free agent. She was like, okay, fine. And then one day she was like, I'm hanging out with this other guy. And I was like, what? Why? And she was like, because you're not committing. And I was just like, oh, shit. Like, and I remember spiraling really hard. Yeah. And I don't say any of this out of shame or guilting her. Like, she did what was right for her. And that was beautiful that she stepped into her power, because it was not easy for her to do that. She preferred me, wanted me, chose me. And I didn't choose her at the time. And to hear that she spent the night with another man, like, it wrecked me. I spiraled the whole night, and into the next day, to the point where I went into EO and I screamed so hard I puked 6 times. I just kept screaming and I just kept puking. And I was just like, this is insane. I have no idea what's going on, but this is what's supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. And I remember coming home and she called me, because she was like so regretful about what she did. She's like, this isn't what I wanted. Like, I just thought about you, and et cetera, et cetera. And I knew in that moment that if I didn't FaceTime her, if I didn't look at her face, I would just hear her voice, and it wouldn't be enough to like pull me out of my egotistical righteousness. So I FaceTimed her and I saw her, and instantly it was okay. I was like, I just want to see you, and the initiation was grow the fuck up. Yeah. The king doesn't half-ass the queen, and it really gave me an opportunity to choose something. And it didn't mean that all of a sudden we were like, let's go, it was like, okay, now what does this look like? What does it look like for Scott to like close the doors on other women and stand powerfully in his commitment and revere his partner? Like that is something that Amber has been very graceful and gracious with me navigating. There's a lot of trauma in past relationships, and I've been very committed to going to therapy and working through them versus burning down my relationship to be like, well, the next one will be different. And it's like, what? Like, no, I'm showing up in the next relationship too. Like, yes, I could be single and do a bunch of therapy by myself, but relationship problems occur in relationship. So they will be waiting for me in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was a pit. That was a pit in my stomach, viscerally, multiple times of just wanting to be a boy,
Yeah.
And I said when Chester died and I held his hand when he transitioned, I said that day I became a man. And that didn't mean all of a sudden I was like Gladiator, I wasn't Russell Crowe and fucking Gladiator. Like, I wasn't Maximus. I was like, oh God, like, how do I ride this horse, and like, how do I shoot this bow? And it's been a really, really challenging, but also beautiful lesson to like be the masculine presence for myself and to do that in a respectful and honorable way for myself and those around me. I love how these pits work because as I speak them out, and I think you saw it too when you were sharing me with your pits of the trip, you're like, oh wow, there's actually a lot of beauty in that. And the word, although that like difficulty that came through and the lack of commitment and all that, the word that really came through was grace.
Yeah.
Of like, wow, like how beautifully I was held through my own childishness or like ignorance and forgiveness and just delicateness. So that was a big one.
That was a pretty deep pit, for sure.
Yeah.
It was a good one, though.
Yeah.
Again, this is like the power of witnessing and being in a circle with men. Like, so much comes up when you're just actively listening, or presently listening is what I like better. But I'm going to acknowledge a peak, and I think you'll resonate with this one. And I think it's been a theme for this island in general, and that's resilience. I wanted to call out that peak for myself and acknowledging the power that is resilience, that I probably never, prior to this, acknowledged it as a power, because it really is powerful. And when I say resilience, it's acknowledging that I didn't give up on myself. I didn't give up on the process, and there were many opportunities to, and I didn't return to what I was thinking is safe in order to escape what was happening in my life. And so, examples of that would be I didn't go back to my job because I knew that I needed to remove that from my plate in order to really fall apart and be with my grief and all that's changing in my life. But knowing that that wasn't going to serve myself or my son or what I'm calling into my life. And there was a lot of resilience in feeling that grief and pain of what I thought the family image was going to be, or the resilience of, not giving up on myself during grief in general, meaning like I could have gone down so many dark paths with that. And thankfully, it was easier to kind of acknowledge those paths but not be tempted, mainly due to having your support. So I want to thank you for that. And I mean, like with drinking or smoking or going out and hooking up with people, like all of those coping mechanisms were definitely present. And I feel really proud to say that out loud and to myself, like, good job for not giving up, essentially. And I say it's relevant here in Maui because, you come to Maui or Hawaii in general, you'll see the resilience in these people and this culture. And, we're recovering from a massive fire that happened in August 2023. And you see the resilience in the people here. And there's a lot of suffering, but there's resilience within the suffering and a lot of prayers and faith that things are going to get better and in ways it has, in ways it hasn't. But the common theme is resilience. If not this, then better. And I really feel that we need to acknowledge resilience in others more. again, we never really know what someone else is carrying. Maybe the only thing that's keeping them going is this thread of resilience. And if we're able to acknowledge what we see in that, and maybe it will fuel that resilience to turn into more action in ways that will benefit them and their healing and their process. And yeah, I can acknowledge that peak within myself of that resilience I carry and the resilience I witness, and then even a special way of resilience in my sister. That's definitely a peak of 2024.
It's like your soul knew that the guy you needed to call was not the one who was like, let's get high and drunk and bang chicks.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because while the desires may have been there, the execution wasn't. You know? Like we didn't... Yeah, maybe we smoked a decent amount of weed at one point or another. But like, we were not trying to doom scroll our phones to find girls to fill our voids with. Like, and I think that's the most dangerous one. You know, because that's where other people can really start to get hurt, and like deceit and lack of integrity. So I too feel proud that we did not go down that route, neither of us, in those times.
I mean, we entertained it.
Totally. We definitely got on apps, but like DM chicks, but like nothing ever came of it.
Well, it became clear that it was a waste of time and energy.
Right. It
It wasn't the route. It was not the path.
No. And
Early on, it was very much learned that this is
right.
down.
Yeah. When you said resilience, the other word that came up inside of me, and I think they go hand in hand, is support.
Yes.
Because that's what stuck out to me as the second peak, was the week of my birthday this year. I had zero expectations for it. And to come back from the functional patterns training, the gift I gave myself, that was the only birthday present I expected to receive, was the one I gave myself. I took myself to San Francisco. I did this training. I took myself out to an omakase sushi in San Francisco and like blew it out, got ice cream. Like I did the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I gave myself, like, I didn't expect anything. And then I come home and you're like, did I ever tell you? I'm like, no, what? And you're like, we're going to Tavana on Wednesday. I was just like, sick, you know, like, and that was so sweet to like be thought of. And then on Thursday, my actual birthday, like Amber and I kept it super chill. She was like, I'll take you anywhere you want on this island for dinner. It was so beautiful because like old Scout would be like, okay, you'll take me anywhere. Let's go spend as much money as we can so I feel important. And we went and got like $18 tacos. We went to a taco truck, you know, a fire taco truck. But it was not about how much can I spend to feel important. It was like, what do I really want to nourish my body with right now? And I wanted to spend a quiet evening with her and my puppy. And Friday we went and saw a concert at the Earth Temple, the Sacred Earth Temple. And like, that was super beautiful. Laughed so incredibly hard to the point where like I thought we were going to get kicked out of the event because like they were in their sacred closing circle and we were over in the corner just dying laughing. And I was like, shh. I was like, they're in the middle of mass right now. Like just like clowning. And then, yeah, so that was incredible. I wish you could have been there. It was a fun one. And then Sunday, to have you guys throw me a surprise birthday party at the beach, like it was so interesting because that week there's this narrative that kept coming up of like this isn't my life. And it wasn't, I don't want this life. It was, am I worthy of this level of love and acceptance and support and honoring and celebration? And it was like, choose. It was like, do you want to be? And I was like, well, of course. It was like, then own it. These people are here for you, bro. Like, what other proof do you need?
Right.
Do you need them to bow down and sing you sonnets? You know, like what? You need them to tattoo your face on their forehead? Like, what is it going to take? And it was a really beautiful, like, opportunity to feel celebrated, to really feel like I mattered to those around me, and especially potent because it was in a new place. Like it was in a new location and community, and like a lot of people I didn't technically know, you know, but like they showed up to like come together. And it was beautiful because it wasn't just like they came here for you. It was like they came here for community, and you are community. And it was like, oh wow, that's great. Like that I can really fuck with, you know, like that felt really cool. So to feel really celebrated, just like seen for who I am, like that was really neat. And so I really appreciated your willingness to take that time and to coordinate that with Amber and the funny things that came up along the way of like, he's driving separate. Like, what do we do? You know, that was neat. And so I really appreciate that. That was cool.
You're very welcome. Yeah, that was a special celebration, and it reminded me of a pit, but within that pit was like a peak as well. Of so, I have to call out the pit of not having my mom this year in terms of like celebrations and holidays and having to basically redo them for what works now. And when you were sharing your birthday, I was like, oh yeah, I celebrated my birthday at Montage, and I just had this flashback of like all the love that I got to experience just showing up on property by those that I used to work with, and but so much sadness was, you know, at the root of all of that because I was celebrating my birthday without my mom, and I had my dad there at a property that she was so proud of me for working at, and always wanting to see either me in action or to experience the property itself. And she didn't get to do that before she passed. And here I am throwing my birthday party, staying, you know, grabbing essentially 2 rooms at the fucking Montage Kapalua Bay and going hard in our own way. Like, we didn't throw a big ass party, but like we just leaned in to the experience. And I had all the people there at the time that I really cared about and got to celebrate my birthday with my dad, who got to witness all of it and had many healing, beautiful conversations, acknowledging my mom, and him even saying like, wow, it's a bummer your mom didn't get to see all of this. But he did, you know, and honestly, if my mom was alive, it probably would have been flipped. My dad probably would have been chilling at home and my mom would have been the one. So, and at the same time, like, here was the way, an opportunity for me to experience this with my dad and my mom from really deep spiritual sense. And as much as, you know, the difficulties of celebrating my sister's birthday, my birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Mother's Day, like all of these things without my mom, I found creative ways to create new traditions or traditions that didn't exist back then for essentially me and my sister as a family unit and Zen of what it means to celebrate these holidays now. Man, Montage was, you know, one of those full circle moments that was like the perfect closure for me. Like, I have no desire to go back there again or work there, and it just made sense to go there for my birthday, and the way it unfolded was just pure magic. And the reminder that I'm worthy of it. You know, as growing up in Hawaii, we're always finding ourselves on the service side of things and never getting to experience receiving very rarely, and especially on island. It just doesn't make sense a lot of ways. Like, why would I go stay at Montage when I live in Maui? And, you know, I just want to tap into the experience of being in Oahu because it was, again, full circle. And for me, it was this reminder of who I am as a person, as a really loving, honorable person in the sense. Thank you. Powerful. In the sense that there were 2 experiences specifically on Oahu that made me realize that I'm worthy of this life. And one of those was another resort experience where the story is I found this resort and I was like, oh wow, this is the hotel that me and my friends in high school used to sneak onto and bring girls to impress them. And we would park at the beach and walk a mile up the beach, and it'd be in the dark, and they'd be like, where are we going? And then the resort pops up. And what are we doing here? And then we get onto the resort and we walk up to the pools and we just stand there, and they're like, why are we here? And you just tell them to pause. And out of nowhere, a fucking dolphin comes up. And it's just like, yeah, that's right. You know, and having so many of those moments in my memory and being like, fuck yeah, I'm going to be a guest at this place now, when I never thought ever in my life would I stay at this resort. And to have that experience and share my story with the workers and the uncles there at the bar, and just them laughing with me and being like, wow, like, what a cool story from a local perspective, you know, like, you're coming up in the world, and it was just a really cool remembrance of I am worthy of this life, you know. And I'm telling this because it's leading into my 2025 calling in theme, so to speak. And so the next place is I took Skyla to a restaurant that I worked at 20 plus years ago when I lived in Oahu, and it was a teppanyaki. What's the other word?
Hibachi.
Hibachi. restaurant, but this is like high-end Japanese style where when I worked there, I had to speak Japanese, and 90% of the guests were Japanese. And so it was very much like a unique experience and very authentic Japanese teppanyaki. And I said, fuck it, let's go. She has fond memories of being at that type of restaurant too. And I was like, let's go have a night out and have a yummy dinner. And so they seat us at there's 3 locations, and I went to the location that was the newest and I've never been in, and we got seated right away. We were definitely probably, one of the only locals there, sitting next to a Japanese group. And 5 minutes after being sat down, and looking at the menu and being really excited, and the manager comes up behind me and kneels down and shakes my hand, or asked to shake my hand, and was like, "Mr. Castrence, it's so great to have you back. I saw in our files that you used to work here, and we're so grateful that you've come back. How has life been since Tanaka of Tokyo?" And I'm just like sitting there like, holy shit. Like, what's even happening right now? And then sitting in that moment and being like, wow, this is fucking cool. And a reminder of like, I'm so glad I, choose to close doors with my work in good ways, and not burning bridges, and working hard. And turning over my right shoulder and looking at Skylar, and her being like, "What's up? Like, I want to know more about this version of you that people are treating you like a fucking VIP." And they were. They had on my card VIP, let manager know. And I remember being on the flip side of that, of like, oh shit, there's a VIP at my table. I better go get with the manager, and doing that. And now the roles have flipped. And it's this remembrance and realization of I am worthy, so worthy of myself, and I am powerful, like you said. The work I do, the interactions I have, and the impact I leave is so worthy of what I'm receiving today in terms of that, and acknowledging the power of which I walk this earth. And it was just such a beautiful experience. So fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Which is the perfect leeway once I get back to me for 2025. Let's fucking go. So if you have any more pits or peaks you want to throw in there, because what a great conversation.
So your pit, it was actually already there, but it kind of, it's a continuation of it. But then it speaks on something bigger. So the pit I thought of was your birthday, because I felt like I let you down. I felt like, I remember it plain as day. I think I was at Aaron's. I was in haiku, or I don't remember what I was doing. I was in haiku, and I came back late, and we ended up getting to the property late. And I could see the disappointment because you wanted to show your dad the sunset, and then fucking monkey pod that day was just head up their ass, like just so bad. So I just
2-hour wait, pretty much.
Yeah, like, so I just felt bad. It reminded me, and it ended up like kind of turning and it being fine and all that stuff. But like in that moment, there was something about how I feel internally when I perceivably let my friends down. Most notably done through a lack of communication. And that was really the pit theme, because the other example was going to Colombia in July and not filling out the retreat because I didn't have anybody from my community come. It was all Greg's, and Greg felt disappointed. Now, we had a successful retreat and there was 12 people, but it was mostly his effort in that regard. And again, I felt like I let him down due to a lack of communication about expectations, about what we were really doing and how we were going to fill it and all that stuff. And the interesting thing about this pit was a peak in practice, which is not letting things grow stagnant. Because both you and I came and talked about that. Both Greg and I went and talked about that. And this opportunity amidst the feeling of disappointment or letdown or dropping the ball is an opportunity for repair. And I feel like that is such an important thing in the world of brotherhood. I heard this story yesterday, 2 days ago maybe, that 200 years ago, if we were to go hunting together and you shot the deer and I felt like a disappointment, we had 3 hours to break that down and talk about it while we skinned the deer and carried it back to camp. Nowadays, we just get on with our lives, and these conversations never happen. Yeah. And then this resentment or this pity or this whatever feeling builds and never gets reconciled.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something really beautiful to the opportunity of men who care about each other to be like, hey, I've been carrying this and I don't want to. I want our relationship to be light. I want our friendship to be fun. And that doesn't necessarily lend itself to leaving things to chance. It leans itself to leaning into power, of being like, hey, I want to be responsible for this. And it really showed me this opportunity moving forward to get very clear in communication with those I care about, to being like, hey, what are their expectations and what are we creating here and what does that look like? And remembering that I get to choose what this looks like. Not I get to choose what it looks like for you, but I get to choose what it looks like for me, and that includes in how I witness you. So if I want to choose that you have a wonderful time, I get to be responsible for asking you, what does it look like for you to have a wonderful time?
Mm-hmm.
Things can come up at that point, and you might not have a wonderful time, but at least I get to say I was powerful in my commitment to choose how I could see how it could come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of one of the things I'm taking into 2025 is I get to choose. I get to choose how this happens. And I get to align myself in accordance with the outcome I'm looking to achieve and act that way versus leaving it to chance. That kind of just like dovetails into like leaving Colombia, because like when I left Colombia, I stopped in Phoenix. I allowed myself to go up to Sedona. I went to a breathwork experience that was just mind-blowingly powerful. I ended up getting this new tattoo, and it really showed me that like, while leaving Colombia was really challenging, Amber and I were going through some stuff, and Greg and I were going through some stuff, and like just a lot of challenge. That like there's still a really opportune way to see that we're held, that we're guided, and I really appreciated you calling your mom into this podcast, and I feel like the opportunity to dedicate this one to her, of like, we wouldn't be here doing this without her.
True.
Had she not called in the prayer for you to pray, like that reminder that like, just because they left their human form, they're still here.
Mm-hmm.
And her presence is most definitely felt. And sometimes when I'm feeling salty or like annoyed, I'm always like, what would Elena think right now about this? Like, Scott, be nice, like, just like, okay, like, what does that look like? But also like her saying that's also like, and be nice to you. To yourself, to myself. Yeah. And remembering that like this motherly energy is so much bigger than playing sides. Yeah. And I think 2025 is a year filled with a lot of love, a lot of power, a lot of celebration, a lot of challenge, or growth, I'll call it. But I think in that can be a lot of fun, a lot of ease, a lot of joy, a lot of celebration, a lot of deep, deep, deep belly laughs. That's one thing I love about Skyla and Amber is the level to which they laugh is such good medicine.
It is.
Like, it's especially for us, like, the more masculine and like taking things seriously. And, and they're like, do you not get it? They always joke with like, yeah, when we do medicine, it's just so loving. Come on. And we're like, we remember.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your peaks and your pits. I love that exercise. I love the opportunity to recant, because you said something earlier about like honoring the peaks and the pits, and it's such an honor to honor them with someone I honor. And that's why I love doing it with Amber, and like hearing you're doing it with Skyla. If you do it, like to honor life's to revere life in the highs and the lows, and to remember that we have the opportunity to celebrate that with someone else. It's like, damn, like, how did I get so lucky?
I think it became very clear that I think Peaks and Pits is the 4th episode of every month.
I love that.
Where we reflect on the whole month, because every month moving forward is just going to be dramatically different with everything we're stepping into. And what a great way to tune in with each other, because it's not just about the podcast, right? It's about life and the human experience of what we have going on behind the cameras, and there's constant peaks and pits. And I think we've just solidified that missing link of what is that last week's recording, and it's this, because we didn't plan this at all. Like, this was like, what we were going to talk about was the most random shit, like reflecting on society and the weirdness. Yeah, like what do you think about the girl who fucking is about to fuck 1,000 dudes, and what world are we in? But this, like, that's all irrelevant in the sense, like, this is where the magic is, and that seems to be more distraction.
That's what they want us to talk about. They want us to talk about the UFOs and the ditties. And it's like the theater of the Matrix will always be playing a show that's alluring enough to distract us with.
Right.
The question is can we honor life and its intelligence about being like, man, I got kicked in the dick this month. Mm-hmm. It's like, what did you glean from that? It's like, that I'm supported, that I'm like, I still wake up the next day, that I didn't go reach for weed or porn or whatever. Mm-hmm. I reached for a hug. Yeah. Like that. I want that. So I love that calls to you, and I'm 1,000% for it. Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
Well, with that, like, let's close it up with 2025. I mean, you shared a lot of kind of highlighted points of what you think 2025 is going to be. I'd love to hear what you're calling in, or maybe even your vision, or your intention, not even goals. Like, I could care less about your goals, because I want to know what energy you're stepping into for 2025.
All right, intentions for 2025. And I really like that you didn't put it in the goal category, because one of the things I love to say or have heard that is like, you tell life what you want, she'll show you how you get it. And the what is the intention. It's not honestly the how, like it's the what, right? And so like community, service, excitement. That's the one thing I said I want more of lately. Amber said, she was like, if you could have one more thing, what would you have? And she said, play. And I was like, God, you're amazing. And she said, what about you? And I said, excitement. Because for the past couple of months, I have not felt excited about anything. The one moment I started feeling excited again was when I started playing tennis. And I think part of it for me is tennis was the one place where I got to crush my opponent. I didn't have any competitiveness anymore. Like, I had no like real drive. And so it was this opportunity to like step into this feeling, and it ended up being really exciting. And so when I think of 2025, one of the things I want to do more is contribute. I see the idea unfolding is this community offering of breathwork. I honestly don't even feel the need to monetize it. I think what I'll do is tell the organization that hosts it to monetize it, and then we donate it to charity, or we donate it to Lahaina Fire Relief. But I don't feel the need, because I've said this for a long time, I don't want to monetize my passions, because that's how I ruined tennis. Was I started teaching professionally, and it ruined it. And so I would love to give it away. And I think I've found that with JoJo Dixon and Dixon Performance and Tough Hawaii, the Underdog Foundation, is like, I want to go to them and be like, hey, I want to just give this, And again, like your point of not what, like if that doesn't happen that way, it will happen. However, it's supposed to. Yeah. So contribution is one. Excitement. It's not that I want to travel more. It's that I want to experience new things. And that could look like in the form of like, I want to start cooking more, especially the recipes of my culture. Like I really want to cook recipes for my mom. I think there's a lot of beauty in that. I want to eat new foods. I want to see new sights. I think it'd be really fun to travel with you and Skyla and Amber and I, whether that's to Oahu or Kauai or the Philippines or something. Yeah, something around that, around like new excitement. And the last one is impact, which kind of falls in the idea of contribution. I really want to honor all the work I've been doing and start sharing. So like maybe service is the word, is start creating content on social media that helps people navigate their healing journeys more effectively, more enjoyably, more connected. Because I acknowledge I've done a lot of work. I've done hundreds of hours of therapy and coaching and retreats and hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment in that. And I didn't do it just for me. And I want to stop being stingy with my love and start giving it out to the world. And that's I think the one I want accountability on. If I were to ask for any accountability, it would be on that one. Is help hold me accountable to serve my community with the tools that I've learned. Because I really do believe, I feel very convicted that is a place that God is asking me to double down on. It just feels very true for me. Other than that, I'm going to leave it up to life. I don't really have a whole lot of other things that I feel like I need to experience in 2025.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Wow. And so it is. 2025 for me. I'll start with kind of let's say, like the theme of my belief. No more ceilings or no ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything, whether it's within me or externally, that puts a cap on what I'm capable of. So I'm really leaning into this philosophy of there's no ceilings and anything is fucking possible. And it's really up to me to choose. With that comes, connection and community. I really, after being in my cave for close to a year of, being by myself with you in this house and very protective, I'm feeling really called and desirable to connect with others. And I've got glimpses of that over the last couple of days and realizing like I have a powerful voice and wisdom to share based on just even the last year. So I'm really calling in community, and this is also for the sense of like brotherhood and fathers, and this will only ripple down to Zen having a community as well, and my sister having community. That's something I'm really calling in, and that's something I actually really would love some accountability on, is to continue leaning into that. Another aspect is play, which she's brought up with Amber, but play in the sense of like allowing my wild back into my life, into my body, into my being. I truly desire to be more connected to myself in the sense of my wildly authentic self. And I've been there before, and I know it's possible to be able to have that within me and still be productive and be focused while still playing, which means like more nature time, more things that make me feel alive, like kind of excitement, but just being wild with it, like letting go of the barriers, no ceilings, and letting that authentic inner child come out and go roll in the grass and play in the garden, like shit like that. No ceiling, community and connection, wild play and wildness. And then the last part, which kind of ties everything in together for me, is passion and purpose. With the whole reset and restart that I've experienced over the last year of really figuring out what makes sense for me to live a life that I truly love, with no ceilings. It's living a life of offering and being in a space and a come from of love and deep passion with love for what I'm doing, what I'm offering, which will only fuel the power of who I am and what I can offer to others in this world, in my community. And that kind of wraps up my theme and intentions for 2025 is I'm going fucking big. And I don't know how big that is. I just know I need to remove the ceiling in order to really reach that point. And all of these dynamics that I just shared are going to help me get there.
So just to recap what I heard on my side, it was contribution, excitement, and impact. And on your side, it was community, play, and the third one...
Passion and purpose.
Passion and purpose.
With no ceilings.
Yeah. All right. To me, all that lines under the word power. Yeah. That sounds like a very powerful life. And I really invite anybody who's still listening to this, who's gotten this far, to take some time, whether it's with you and yourself or with you and a friend, and do a deep dive into your 2024. What were your peaks? What were your pits? What are you calling in for 2025? What matters to you most? And how can you be held accountable to really call that in powerfully? And use us as sounding posts, use us as accountability pillars, use us as inspiration or pushback, whatever, right? Like, we're here as your mirror. No rhyme intended. And we really want to hear what you guys and gals are calling in for 2025 and want to stand powerfully in. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing yourself, your year in retrospect, you in sharing you the past year in this house and your family. Man, That just reminded me of a peak of that moment with Zen
Mm.
and the marble run. Like that's a
On
whole
the
nother
pillow.
that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Focus on anger and release. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have a whole we'll have a whole episode on anger at some point.
Mhm.
Yeah, just what a beautiful year. You know, not easy,
No.
worth it.
And with that, I would just want to call out my appreciation for you showing up and continuing to show up, no matter how awkward, difficult, and triggering it's been over the last year. Here we are sitting together at the end of the year after all of that. And I just want to genuinely share my appreciation with you for who you are and what you bring into my life, what you bring into this house for my sister, for Zen, and just all the support and witnessing that you were able to do for me. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Mm-hmm. Let's go 2025.
Let's go. See you in the next one, yo.
Much
Aloha.
love, you guys. Aloha.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the interview today. And if you haven't already done so, please like or follow us on whatever platform you're listening to, and let us know if you have any questions or comments or requests of future interviewees.
And we hope you find this inspiration, the clarity, and the direction to fully lean into being human, whatever that means for you. Aloha.